Right, so good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Inner East Community Committee. My name, as you know, is Councillor Denise Reagan, and I will be chairing today's meeting. Before I begin, could I inform members that the 90-minute rule and social distancing has been removed? So we might go further than 90 minutes, but hopefully with some good chairing, we can make sure that we do business in good time. But it would be good practice as well that if the room gets a little bit overheated, we have a break to get the air flowing. But I think it's feeling that it's fairly okay. We've got all the windows open here and everybody's okay with that. The Inner East Community Committee covers Bermontos and Richmond Hill, Gipton and Harells, and Killingbeck and Seacroft wards, and is a committee where ward councillors have an opportunity to discuss and make decisions about services and priorities for the local area, and also consider funding applications regarding local community projects and youth activities. The meeting is being live streamed, so just be careful of your movements and what you say, because it's all been on the YouTube. So just to warn you about that. And the public can so the public can observe this meeting without actually attending, which is a real good thing, because people can't always get to venues where community committees are held. So we're making allowances and making sure that people are able to join in. Could I now invite members and officers to introduce themselves? And once you have done, can you mute your microphone? And I'll start, as I say, I'm Councillor Denise Reagan for Bermontos and Richmond Hill, and I'm chair of this community committee. Over to Councillor Graham.
Councillor Graham, Bermontos and Richmond Hill. Welcome, everybody. Thank you.
Councillor David Jenkins from Killingbeck and Seacroft.
Mark Kirkby, Senior Librarian East.
Andrea Ellison, Chief Librarian, Leeds Libraries. Debbie Oldham, Clerk to the Committee.
Stuart Byrne, Locality Programme Manager with Safer Stronger Communities.
Ruth Tiernan, the Localities Officer for the Inner East Community Committee.
Good afternoon, everybody. Councillor Camilla Maxwell from Gipton and Harells.
Hi everyone, Mike Eakins from the Intelligence and Policy Service.
And I'm Councillor Jane Dowson. I'm here to present one of the items today.
That's lovely. Moving to the agenda, can I ask that you, Debbie Clerk, to go through the items 1 to 6?
Thank you, Chair. Under agenda item 1, there are no appeals against the refusal of inspection of documents. Agenda item 2, there are no items which require the exclusion of press or public. Agenda item 3, there are no late items of business. However, there has been some supplementary information circulated this afternoon, and members should also have a copy of that in paper form.
Is that the case? Is it you two members, David, Ron, have you had your supplementary copies? Yeah, lovely, great. Thank you.
And agenda item 4, could I ask members to declare any interests? Agenda item 5, we have received apologies from Councillor Hussain and Councillor Khan. And I understand that Councillor Dye and Councillor Arif are due to attend, but they are actually stuck in traffic at the moment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We haven't got there yet, Ron. No, I'll bring you in when we come to minutes. Okay. As there are no members of the public, we won't have an open forum because that's only there if members of the public are present. There are no members of the public present, and we haven't had any submissions, have we, written? So we'll move on to the next item, which is agenda item 8, which is the minutes of the meeting of Wednesday, the 28th of July. Do all members that are present accept these as the true record?
No, Chair.
Right, Ron?
There's issue that I raised at the previous meeting on the 17th of March was the,
Just wait a minute, Ron. Where in your minutes?
I'm at
Is it
number
not
8,
right?
minutes of the previous meeting, Chair.
What page?
It's the minutes itself. Right,
Page 7.
okay. Where I raised the question of alternative dispute resolution, it's not recorded in the minutes yet. Right, and that's all I wish to say at this stage. I brought the issue up as regarding what effects it could have on the council's procurement, but it's not in the minutes, Chair. Alternative dispute ADR. That's all I have to say about the minutes, Chair.
Right. Can you correct those? Have we got somebody else that can accept that as an issue?
Chair, we won't actually be able to make resolution on the minutes anyway, because we're not quorate.
No.
So it will only be a recommendation for
yeah.
this time.
Yeah.
But I will make note
Right,
that
thank you.
those were correct, and we'll try and sort that out for them.
Thank you, Deborah.
Okay.
Other than that particular point, is everything else okay with the minutes?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, lovely. Any matters arising from those minutes? David?
Yes, so 2 matters. On matter point 8, matters rising, minutes 70, connecting Leeds transport strategy. Just to say that the flexibus will start on the 27th of September, and there's a launch tomorrow at Tesco's car park, which is one of the picking up points apparently. So there should be 6 buses. I think they've managed to recruit the drivers, which is probably a miracle. And they should be operating Monday to Saturday from next Monday, the 27th. Is the 27th.
That's good news, David. And I know that there's been a lot of publicity on the Facebook and Twitter that those issues have been sent out, haven't they, from a lot of the ward members, which is good news for Inner East Leeds.
And secondly, through your chair, minute 71 about request an update from the CEO at the Leeds Gypsy and Traveller Exchange, Leeds
What
Gate.
page is that, David?
It's on page 8, minute 71. At the top.
Yeah.
Page 8, yeah.
Yeah.
So the chair requested that an invitation be extended to the Chief Officer Housing to provide an update on the council strategy on working with gypsies and travellers. So I don't think that's happened, has it?
It's not happened for this particular meeting because we had quite a few items that we had to get through, but we have noted it, David, and we'll make sure that there's an invite to housing looking at their strategy of what they're doing with regards to that, and we'll invite them for the next meeting.
Okay, I think we're trying to look at an overarching holistic strategy across the
When
council.
you say we, who's that then?
The council.
All right.
So I think
Of course, it might have been the royal we.
No, not me. The Councillor Venner, I think, has convened a group, a cross-departmental group to look at our policy towards negotiated stopping, for instance, and so on.
Yeah,
So-
but we will invite them to the next meeting.
Okay, so it's just to make sure it's still on the agenda.
Oh, it is, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. That been noted there. Anybody else got anything from the minutes?
Can I come in, Chair?
Yes, Ron?
Oops, sorry, I left it on. On page 9, Chair, on the Inner East Community Committee update report, Chair. Am I okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Where it says the Green Garden Guardian Scheme, there has been 13 referrals assisting with the gardens for vulnerable tenants. I have experience of this vulnerable tenants bit now for the last 5 years, Chair, where Carl Fawcett is concerned, as you well know. His disability is extreme, to say the least, and he does suffer at the hands of the situation that he has to deal with, where the gardens is concerned around his property. It is a wonderful person to meet and see him in this chair. He lives out of the wheelchair and all the computer work he does. He's now taking a course at Leeds University and what I'm very hope he passes. But where the referrals are concerned, could we not make this a part of the core work so that we don't forget about them as regarding when they need the gardens doing, Chair?
I think in fairness, Ron, that's a matter that housing, along with social care will
That's right.
take up with about whether any individual tenants need assistance in garden, and then they'll take that through. That's my understanding of what that is. And then if that's not happening, you can take that to individual ward member meetings, but then if you're not getting anything through that, then it'll come back to here.
Well, there's a need for looking into this actual aspect of this particular gardening job, Chair. I've already done that with the area manager and the social services. I was politely asked if I could do it. Well, if I had good eyesight, I haven't got good eyesight any longer, I would go and do it, I could assure you. But where it is, I see as core work, it just needs slotting into a budget page where it can be actually picked up and then done as part of the core work that they do where the gardening team is concerned. That's all I'm bothered about.
Okay. David, do you want to come in on this point?
So the scheme, I think, started in West Leeds, and it's funded by the Housing Advisory Panel. So I think that's one route in which the scheme, which is called the Green Guardian Scheme, could be funded. So this year, I think we've done 30 gardens in Seacroft, but you could obviously do one in Hare Hills and Gipton and Bermontops and Richmond Hill, but funded, I think it's about £3,000 or £4,000 a year through the Housing Advisory Panel. So it supplements the housing budget.
Ron, can you turn your microphone off?
Oh, sorry, yeah, sorry.
I mean, we'll take that up, and I think individual HAP, because we've obviously got 2 HAP meetings from this community committee, and that'll be brought to the next HAP for Bermontops, Richmond Hill and Gipton and Hare Hills. And I think you're already delivering that scheme in Killenbeck and Seacroft, so we'll look at that way, Ron, and we'll liaise with housing to see if they can refer things into that. Okay. Is that okay? Yes. Yeah, lovely, great stuff. Moving on. I think we're now, pardon? Yeah, we're now at item 8, so it's the city plan engagement. So Councillor Dowson, it's over to you.
Well, first thing I'd like to do is thank you for having us here at your meeting, and especially bumping us up the agenda, because I have a school governors meeting that's actually happening now, so I need to get there, but I'm not rushing because we do want to hear what you've actually got to say. I'm here because I'm a deputy exec board member for the leader of the council, and he's tasked me along with a team, including Mike, to actually pull together a new city plan. And looking round the room, there are those of us who will remember a decade, well, it's over a decade ago now, when we had the last full city plan done here in Leeds, which is an awful long time ago, and a lot of things have happened in the last 10 years. And I was sitting down making a list, and there are things that couldn't have been envisaged 10 years ago. We've had Brexit, we've had devolution, we've got the climate emergency. And 10 years ago, while we started talking about the climate emergency, it wasn't an emergency then, and it's come to the forefront and is one of the key pillars that we're actually working on as a council. And then, of course, over the last 18 months, we've had the COVID pandemic. And if there's one thing the COVID pandemic has actually taught us, it's the value of working together. And I think all of us will actually agree that we couldn't have got through it without our third sector partners, who we owe a huge debt of gratitude to. But it's actually demonstrated to us that as a council, we can't do it all on our own, especially not with the budget cuts that we have had. But that's only a small part of it. Not only shouldn't we do it, but we should be encouraged to actually work with our partners, the businesses in the city, the third sector, on the betterment of the city and to the betterment of our residents within the city. Statistics can only go so far, and Mike's got the first draft of the joint strategic assessment, which is full of statistics, but statistics don't actually mean anything. They're an indicator, and what we want to hear from you is what life is actually like on the ground for your residents. Mike will go through the statistics, and one of them that is actually quite stark and does affect your ward is one of your wards, Bermontops, is if you actually live in Adel, you'll live If you're a woman, you'll live just over 11 years longer in Adel than you would in Bermontoffs. And if you are a man, it's nearly 15 years. That's a huge indicator of the divides within the city. But it's not all about health, is it? And you will know that. It's maybe about air quality, about housing, around health and access to services. There's a lot of things that actually lead into that difference. But it isn't just about health, it's around housing, it's around education, it's around skills. And are you disadvantaged living in your ward? Why? What will make the difference for your young people in the city moving forward? What one, and it could even be a small thing that we change that will actually mean that your young people are coming out with better qualifications and the skills that are needed to move Leeds forward. We all know Leeds is a great city. I've always thought Leeds is a great city to live in. We are the economic powerhouse of this region. So what happens to Leeds actually has a big impact on lots of other cities and areas around us. And the statistic that Mike told me that I like best is the fact Yorkshire and Humber has the same population as the whole of Scotland. So we are talking about an awful lot of people. 800,000 people live in Leeds alone. But our economy is key. Leeds economy, 108% larger than the economy in Sheffield and 177% higher than Bradford. So we are an economic driver, and we do need to make sure that our success actually affects the other regions as well. But we can't slap ourselves on the back too much because we still have huge challenges. Now, again, these statistics have all, and they're statistics. What does statistics mean? 24% of our children under 16 in Leeds live in relative poverty. 24%, 1/4 of the children. And as a number, that's 36,000 children in Leeds are living in relative poverty. We've got a significant challenge in raising attainment. That's not new. We've been trying to raise the attainment within the city for many, many years. What can we do differently? What will make that big difference to our young people attaining? Obviously, we've now got the climate change agenda. What can we do to make this the big difference, not only in the city, but to the country and to the wider world with regard to climate change? Climate change has its own problems within the city, flooding and so on. So it is something we need to take really seriously. And obviously pollution can affect health as well. And I think the main thing is that we need to have this shared vision across the city, not only as councillors, but as businesses, as educational establishments and our citizens. We have to have this shared vision to actually move forward. And the main key driver is, and we say this, no one left behind. At the end of Mike's presentation, he has a list of questions, which, you know, are only a starter for 10. They're just suggestions, but you might want to tell us anything. So we're here to listen to you, tell us what it's like for the people who live in your area, because you're the experts. You're the experts on those people. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Austin. I'm going to run through this presentation as quickly as I can, so I understand by the magic of technology. Voila. So if we could get started on the first slide, please. Yeah, it was all running smoothly, wasn't it? I'll make a start. I think I can probably do some of it from memory, so I'll make a start on sort of the first slide. Would have talked about why now for a city plan, and there are quite a number of reasons, but just to pick out a couple, I suppose. The first of them is that we've got still got a relatively new council leadership, which does offer a natural point at which to just take a step back and reassess whether the ambitions we've got as a council and with our partners are the right ones. The second reason is really taking some learning from the pandemic, and I've you develop these lines going around the community committees, but I've had this line, you know, it's very difficult to take anything positive out of a global pandemic. But if there were to be something, it may well be the way that people have come together in the city at a couple of different levels. You know, at that citywide level, we've seen the council and our partner organisations and businesses and people that are anchors in our communities come together to respond to the pandemic. But we've also seen at a community level, you know, people really coming together to support one another, real boosts in neighbourliness and people helping out people in their local area. So a question for us moving forward is how can we hold on to that and keep that as close as we can and apply it to other things that we want to achieve as a city. And the third thing I'll just highlight, and we can circulate the full slide deck afterwards if that's better for people. The third thing I would highlight is about money, and we shouldn't shy away from that. The way the government we have at the moment, and probably the last few have liked to operate, tends to be to have pots of money that local places will bid into. And in that context, in that way of working, we think it'll help us as a city to have a sort of single direction of travel that the council and our partners are all signed up to, that sets out what we're trying to achieve, will put us in a better place. So that's just some of the reasons why we think moving towards a city plan is the right way to go. And if I think about my next slide is around sort of what the city plan will do. And oh, we're up, although we're a bit zoomed in. If we could jump to the next slide, please. I'll keep talking just because, yeah. So sort of what the city plan will do. So as I mentioned, it'll be a direction of travel. What we're not proposing to create here is a really detailed plan of everything that we will do in Leeds. I mean, that'd be huge and unwieldy, and actually is better left for the more targeted things that we have. So there's a health and wellbeing strategy, there's an inclusive growth strategy. We've got lots of targeted pieces of work. So say this will be a headline ambition. There we are, a sort of a direction of travel. It'll also be focused around the city's three key pillars. So of health and wellbeing, inclusive growth and climate change. We're not proposing to move away from that. But what we do want to do is strengthen the prominence and value of community within that. So community ties, civic pride, that I think are things that people that have come out over the last few years really, really strongly, and trying to tell the story of Leeds a little bit better. So, you know, talking about Leeds as a single place, it's false. It's a false narrative. Leeds is a massive city. All of our communities have their own strengths and challenges, and we need to try to reflect that a little bit better in our strategic ambitions. So if we can, the next slide is about how the city plan will be developed. So at the moment, we're doing a whole range of engagements, so including community committees. We're talking to equality hubs. We're talking to the third sector through some roadshow events based in localities. We're talking to the youth council and some youth summits too. So loads of engagement, and this will culminate in this year's State of the City event at the beginning of December, when we'll bring together elected members again with partners in the city to have another look, really. So at that point, we'll aim to play back everything we've heard and a skeleton of a city plan and give members the opportunity to have another look. The aim being then that the council will adopt that in February next year. So the next slide, please. This is actually a good reminder for me, if nothing else. I was just going to touch on, the joint strategic assessment. So hopefully people are familiar with this, and I know some people in the room are, because they've heard me spiel on about this once this week already, or last week, sorry. But this is, for anyone who isn't aware, or as a reminder, this is an analysis of the city that we do every 3 years. Its primary purpose is to inform the health and wellbeing strategy, but it's much broader than just health and wellbeing. We really do look at every aspect of the city that affects someone's health. So from housing, the jobs market, the environment, all sorts of things, public transport. So we've just completed the most recent JSA. We do this every 3 years. And for anyone who is interested in engaging in it in a little bit more detail, because I can't it's here and it's 100 odd pages, so I can't possibly go through it in detail, but we will set up a members seminar for people who would like to engage with that in a little bit more detail. But Councillor Dowson's already touched on a couple of the key messages that around, you know, it's really significant inequality across the city. Most prominently seen in life expectancy differences and in the rates of child poverty. But we see that the population aging, but also becoming much more diverse. So at the older end of the age spectrum, we have got much more diverse communities and a changing socioeconomic profile as well. And we also see that the largest populations of our youngest residents and of our oldest residents in our most deprived communities. Now, some of those communities are in the wards that the people in this room represent. So you'll know this better than I do about the situation on the ground there. Councillor Dawson touched on educational attainment as well. Really long-standing challenge in Leeds, and one that we haven't massively shifted the dial on. There's some positive movement in the very early years, but it's the gap between the people who are attaining and the people who are not is highest at Key Stage 2 and highest in for children coming from families more likely to be experiencing poverty. And the rate of disadvantaged Leeds children's attainment versus disadvantaged children's attainment elsewhere in the country is really stark. And across Leeds as a whole, there's a 26% attainment gap at Key Stage 2. So that's our most deprived children versus in some cases, our most affluent and our highest achieving children. 26% attainment gap, which is very, very stark and a massive challenge for the city moving forward. That said, we've got some strengths too. We have got a strong economy in Leeds. We've had sort of 10 years of economic growth in the city. Strong knowledge-based economy. The challenge we've got is how do we connect people to those opportunities? It's all well and good having them there, but we need to make sure that people, particularly in some of our, inner city communities experiencing poverty, are connected in. You can skip through a few slides because I've covered a bit there. And if we could go to the last one, which is the questions, which you won't be able to see, but there were 4 key questions that I sort of wanted to pose. And as Councillor Dawson said, I'm sure we'll diverge from these, but what are the big issues as you see them for the city now and over the next 10 years? The same question about your communities in the Inner East. The third question is about communities themselves and how can communities play their part, and very, very many of them already are doing so. So it might be about how can we continue to equip people, what support can we provide to help communities to make a difference in their local area, accepting that the council cannot do as much as we would have done in the past.
Can I just say to members, it's in your pack on page 15.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
That was well planned, even more well planned than I knew. And the final question was about the best city ambition. So you'll all know that for the past sort of 10 or so years, we've had the ambition to be the best council in the best city in the UK. Now, a new city plan is an opportunity to look again at that. Does that still feel right? Does that resonate? Or would you prefer to see us maybe shift that headline ambition? And what would, if you could set the headline ambition for the city, I guess what would it be? So I'll stop there, Chair, but I hope that was all right.
Thank you, Mike. I think there's lots of issues there for members to contemplate. I'd just like to come in on one on the last question. Does the ambition of being the best city still resonate? And for me, it's not about being the best city. It's about narrowing that gap, isn't it? So that all inner city communities, which is what we've got here in Inner East Leeds, we've got a better understanding and a better ambition to make that gap narrower so that our residents and young people can achieve at that level what the best city is striving to. So that's my comments on that one. Can I open that up for anybody that wants to come in and make a comment on that? Ron?
It's nice to see it again, Jana. Lovely to see it anyway. The thing here that concerns me is we have an intelligence unit. When you talk about strategies and what have you, we are not being kept up to date with the intelligence unit, Jane, that we should be as ward members and that for the colleagues around the table. The intelligence unit exists to see that we actually follow the strategies that's been laid out before us. And in doing so, like we get a first-hand knowledge before we put us pens to paper then to respond on a case like this. So I am concerned where poverty is still going through the route it is, because there's now a full list of poverties and there's an extra poverty angle that's been taken. And for life of me, I can't think of it at the moment. I forgot to bring the paper with me. But poverty should not be acceptable. We have a vision as a city councillors to do the best we can for the people we represent, but we need the support from the likes of the intelligence unit to say, here is the strategies that you actually know, and the partners, we come to the partners now. I shouldn't have to wait while the state of the city takes effect to see who some of the partners are, when it's said every year, like, you know what I mean? We should be warned as beforehand who the partners are of the city. I'd like to see who they actually are, Denise. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Sam Arif, Gipton Harehills. Apologies for being a little bit late, Chair. I got caught up in the York traffic, York Road traffic, that is. So I'm sorry I was 5 minutes late. Welcome, Councillor Dawson, coming and speaking to us at the Community Committee. It's a good place for for you to come and seek views. I think every single thing is interlinked. So poor health, poverty, education, and attainment. It's all connected, if I'm honest with you. And I think that we can't just have, right, we'll go and tackle housing. We've got to tackle absolutely everything, housing being one of them. And I think policies make a difference. They really, really do. And I know it's really, really early days, but in Gipton Harehills, part of Bermontos, we've got selective licensing. And we've got that, I know, is going to make a big difference, because it means the council officers can get through the door. And it's not just about the house conditions, it's also then picking up on the other things that will come from that, the health inequalities, maybe, any other issues that might get picked up on. So that's policy from the Leeds City Council that will go hopefully and make lives better, but hopefully an area better. It'll improve the quality of life for people. It means that the standard of housing is better for people. Similarly, we introduced something called the Community of Impact Policy in Harehills, where we know we've got so many off licenses in our ward, and that, whilst again it'll take time, but it makes a difference, because it means that we've managed to block 2-3 off licenses, which would have exasperated some of the issues that we're having. So whilst we're sat here, my only thing is, we can come up with lots of different ideas, but unless it's not policy and actually making a difference, it's not going to help. We can have great ambitions, and I'm really proud of the city, and we do have some great ambitions, but it's got to be translated into policy that really impacts local lives. Chair, I'm the public executive member of Public Health. It's incredibly awful to hear that statistic. If you're born in an inner city area as opposed to an outer city area, that's the stark reality. And I think that's a massive challenge for us as a city. But I think there is perhaps an opportunity, because we always knew that health inequalities existed. We all knew that, but COVID has shown a light on it. And I think there's going to be an appetite from across the board to say, we need to challenge this. But it's not just about health inequalities, as Councillor Dawson said, it's all of those other additional things. In terms of the inner city areas, what you often find is a lot of people living in a very densely populated area. They don't have the same opportunities to nice spaces, greener spaces. I think that's something we need to look at. So there's a whole host of things. Please use us as a community committee, because we are the eyes and ears of our community, and we welcome the dialogue. But I think for me, it has to be translated into policy for it to make any difference. That's all from me, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you're right, Salma. I think, we've got a community committee here that operates really well, and things should be channeled through a community committee, because we are the people, like you say, that know what our communities are like. We know what the needs are. So all policies need to come down to this level, don't they? They don't need to be up here in the ether. They need to come down to community committees.
Just want to come back briefly. I love Mike, he's full of statistics. And he tells me we've got around 76 strategies across the city. And we're currently consulting on lots of things of skills and talents. We've just done the local planning consultation and so on. So there's lots of consultation going. There's lots of strategies out there. But you're right about policies, actually making those into a policy that will actually affect everybody, and absolutely get everything. Well, I keep quoting Nigel Richardson, who used to be our educator, and he had a saying, everything comes from everywhere else. You know, you don't suddenly arrive at 16 with no qualifications. You've had a journey to get there. It could be poor housing. It could be overcrowded housing, so you don't have anywhere to do your homework. It could be health issues. You're missing school because you're not well. If you're not well, is it because you live in a damp house, or you're not accessing green space, which is good for your mental health? So everything comes from everywhere else. And do we tackle it all? We'd love to tackle it all. But as a city, as a council, we don't have the funds to tackle it all, which is why, Ron, we come to partner organisations, to funders, to voluntary sector organisations. But nevertheless, you know, it's finding those key triggers, those key things that we can do as a council and as a city and as partners that will make the biggest difference to those young people. And sometimes those policies, like the fact that we've kept all our shore starts open, sometimes those policies won't show any fruition for 10, 15, 20 years. Doesn't make them wrong policies. It just means that it takes time for that success to filter through, so long as they're not diluted by other things that are affecting those children's lives. And it's the same with health. I'll stop there because I can see one of my colleagues wants to come in.
Councillor Dye and then Councillor McSode.
Thank you. Yeah, can I also give my apologies for being late? We might have been caught up in the same thing. I was trying to get from Kipex and left an hour and it took me a lot longer than that. Well, I certainly would echo everything that's been said. I mean, I actually should have heard that everything comes from everything quote. I haven't heard that, but it's true, isn't it? And so if you want to take kind of my thoughts for what it's worth, if we can't tackle everything, and you're right to say let's stick to the things that we are able to influence, let's make housing a big part of it, because I think in all of our wards, access to high quality affordable housing makes a massive difference, and that will affect people's health. It'll affect young people's ability to have a nice space to sit and do schoolwork, and that will affect achievement. And also tackling housing will make a difference to the climate change agenda, which has to be one of our massive number ones. But I think that would be a great ambition to have, to really tackle housing as an issue. In terms of other things I've noted down, you asked about the best city. I like it. I think it's ambitious, and I think we say it a lot, and I like that. So I would be quite happy to keep that as an ambition. Why not? Why shouldn't we be the best city, the best council? I think it's a great ambition to have. So I personally would keep that. And then in terms of what we come up with as a city plan, can we be careful to do as good a job as possible of kind of slimming it down, not dumbing it down, but slimming it down, so that we can kind of narrow it to some really clear things that everybody says, yes, these are our priorities as a city. We're really going to tackle these issues, rather than a big kind of unwieldy, wordy document that we kind of get a bit lost in, and we kind of forget that that's what we all should be working towards. I think if it's the simpler it is, the more likely it is. You know, that's when we talk about inclusive growth, health and well-being, climate change. We're all big on that because it's simple and we know what we're saying and it matters. So that would be one of my pleas, really. Let's look at all the issues. Let's stick to the things we can really deal with, and housing is something that we really could do with tackling. And then just two other things that I had on my notes when you were talking. Skills gap, yes. It's really quite hard, I think, to tackle the skills gap. It's difficult to tackle it in schools, because schools are so exam focused and single track that there isn't always the space for doing a lot of the other work. I don't know what we could do as a council as a way into that, but it would be really good to look at ways that we can make it easy for schools to enable youngsters to leave with the skills they need to to get out and about in the wider world. And it's also difficult to tackle it once they've become neat after they've left school. But I think that's something that we have had periods as a council when we've been better at tracking neats and turning them into eats. And I think that's probably something, it's not a massive part of any great plan, but I think it's something that could make a really big difference. And then the last one from me is transport. Seacroft's very close to the city centre, but it sometimes feels like a long way away if that's where the opportunities are. I know we've got issues where it's things like flexibus that are coming in, but transport would be on there as well.
Thank you, Councillor Dye. Councillor McSood.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think I've listened to everything, and basically, I have to say, in all honesty, this all comes down. It all comes down to resources and funds, and we have to be brutal and say that. You've just mentioned all these statistics and the differences from Adel to Bermontoffs or Gipton and Hare Hills. They're there. It's evidence. So we have to be brutal and say that funds have to be channeled into the inner city areas, because that's where the greatest gaps are. And as Councillor Reagan has said, there are the gaps, and we need those gaps narrowing for us to be the best city. All those other parts of Leeds need to follow that best city plan. I'm sorry, that's what I've got to say.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think there's some ambitions that to try and achieve, and 10 years is a long time nowadays, because you don't know what's going to happen next year at all, do you really? So the things that are good probably is like the development of the Fernville Centre, which is going to cost £20 million, and hopefully that will be part of this, the government's levelling up. But to say at one level we've had 10 years of an economy, or 10 years of an economy that's grown in Leeds. We've also had 11 years of austerity. So we've got to balance those two things up. And I think most of the economic benefits have gone to the better off, and not to really deal with inequalities. I mean, one of the other challenges now is labour shortage. And I don't know, I mean, it's suddenly arisen, and in a way, I don't know where it's come from, but possibly post-Brexit, post the changes in COVID and the pandemic and so on. But it's also quite a worry, because we've got to fill the places in care homes and nurses in hospitals and so on. And it may be that some of the migration that's occurring will complement some of the gaps that we've got. I mean, we know that from the work that was done in Lincoln Green to recruit people for the hospital and so on from the migrant communities was very successful. And I think that's something that perhaps could be replicated with maybe the Afghan refugees and other refugees that come from into the country. And I think we should welcome that opportunity. The other big issue is going to be about fuel, the cost of fuel. And that's immediate, because we're going down from possibly 70 fuel companies, which under this myth of competition, to maybe back to 6 or 10. But in the meantime, those companies are going to be either subsidized by the government or charging extra £140 over this winter on everybody's fuel bills. And at the same time as people are losing £20 from the universal credit, coming off furlough, and inflation. So 3% inflation is putting up the price of fuel, putting up the price of materials and commodities. So it's lots of things going to happen in the next 6 months, which, rather than think about 10 years, I think those need to be taken into account. And finally, I've spent 2 hours just now on domestic violence and abuse in the local care partnership, and with 60 odd people. And that's a major issue that, again, gets pushed under the carpet to some degree. But I know the West Yorkshire Mayor is having a seminar in November on the issue. And I think we need to press that becomes an issue, something that's funded, that the police are given more resources to take integrated action, that perpetrators are properly dealt with, and that the courts actually are more proactive in dealing with the perpetrators as well, because many victims just feel betrayed by the system.
David. I think there's an issue, isn't there, that previously we've had in set priority areas, as in Lincoln Green, as in the Knolls, as in an area in Killingbeck and Seacrest. And I think we've got to look at that, of what's worked well from that, because it's focused resource in to make a difference, hasn't it? But there's some things that haven't worked. And I think there's areas now that have broadened from that. They've become a need for a priority, but we haven't got the resources to deal with that. So I think we've got to re-look at that whole thing about setting the priority areas and seeing what comes about that.
I think you're right, Chair. It's, I mean, we get the stats from, one of the stats we do get very regularly is the number of people claiming universal credit. And one of those statistics is the number of people who are actually in work claiming universal credit. So how, as a council and with our partners, are we going to encourage every employer in Leeds potentially to actually pay the real living wage as a minimum? And obviously the lowest paid jobs are the potentially the unskilled jobs. So again, raising the level of skills and attainment will not only help the city, because we've got a lot of really high-tech jobs in the city now, but coming into the city as well. So it will help the city, but it'll also mean that a lot of our families are not in that horrible position of working 1, 2, 3 jobs and still having to claim universal credit to get by. And we can do that as a city with our partners, but it is something we can't do on our own. And I thought the whole thing about the city plan, just to finish on, Chair, is that we want it to be a partnership. Absolutely, I could feel Mike nodding like crazy when Councillor Dye was saying, not a long term. We've got long terms, we've got strategies on everything. What we need this to be is a clear, focused bit of work that everybody in the city can actually buy into. So this isn't the end of our conversation. This is actually just the beginning. So we're telling you what we're doing. We've got the State of the City meeting, which we're just pulling together now. We're going to try and make it sort of quite exciting so you can get out and see some of the things that are happening in the city. And then after that, we've still got till February to actually pull that report together. So, you know, we're quite happy to come back later on if you want us back to sort of let you know how we're getting on. But we want you to contact us if there's anything that you see in your wards that you think, you know what, if we
I was going to say,
this,
Jane, can members on an ongoing basis keep in contact with yourselves and say, you know, this has come up now, and I think this answers those questions that you're asking and feed that in.
And also through you, Chair, you know, you may have groups of residents who meet, or groups, not so much residents, but organisations that meet. We went to one of the outer areas and they've asked us to go and speak to the parish councils. You know, so have you got groups? Have you got third sector groups that get together? Would you like us to go and to present to them? You know, we'd like to go out and speak to as many people as possible. We've done so already. We've spoken to Val. I think, Mike, you were talking, we're going to speak to the youth council and so on. You know, we are happy to go and speak to anybody and actually listen to what they're telling us.
I mean, that's really good speaking to the youth council, but I've harped on about this for 20 or 30 years. Not all our young people in need are part of that youth council. Majority of our young people that need support are in that youth council, and we need to get their voices heard, don't we?
And I think through you, Chair, that's why we're coming to you, because, you know, as elected members, you are there to represent the people who don't have a voice, the ones that don't shout loudest, the ones that don't go to committee or community meetings or are involved in organisations. In fact, the majority of the people in Leeds, And we know you know that because we know you're all excellent counsellors, and we know you go out, you have surgeries, you talk, you walk on the street and talk to your residents, you know the organisations, you are key to this. So please, you know, get in touch, let Mike and myself know
Can I
what you're
just bring
thinking.
Salma in, and then I'll just round this item off because we're moving on, and then we'll get back in touch. That's Salma.
Thank you, Chair. If I may just make a suggestion, if it's possible, is there any way we could get perhaps a residence, that format that you've just mentioned from Inner East, maybe to have a gathering, a special almost, because I think it's also important to hear as we move on from COVID, what they are feeling. And I think that's perhaps a good forum for all three. I mean, we can find a location that's ideal for all three wards, get some core people in who engage, to really come in and no doubt they reiterate what we're saying, but I think it'll just reinforce what our residents are saying as well. It backs it up, I think.
We'll work with
Is that all
our
right,
Stronger
Chair?
Communities team along
Thank
with
you.
yourself, Matt, and see how we can pull that together for a, it's an extra meeting, isn't it, outside of the community committee cycle? Yeah, lovely. Thank you. And thanks for coming. And moving on now, we've got a second item, libraries. So I'm inviting Andrea Ellison and Mark Kirby to talk to this report. I don't know if you're going to do it as a double actor, the two Ronnies or two Ronettes or whatever.
On this occasion, it's mainly me,
Right.
but yeah, Mark is going to be chipping in because there'll be different
Lovely.
things I need his support with.
Thank you, Andrea. Carry on.
So thank you very much, Chair. So just a few words of introduction. I think what I'd like to say, I love listening to that presentation on the plan, the city plan, and hopefully you'll see that there is some connection with what I'm going to go on to talk about. And I mean, just at the very end there, talking about a place to bring residents together to meet, you know, maybe you might want to consider about the local library as being that place in the community that might be a suitable venue. And hopefully some of the things we're going to talk about, I'd like to say that I think that libraries are not the only solution, but I think they could be an important part of the solution to a lot of the issues we're facing. So the report that you have, ostensibly the purpose of the report as outlined is very much around updating the committee on the activity of the library service during the period of the pandemic, but also to update on the key priorities of our service recovery strategy. But equally important, if not as important, is not more important, just like to see it as a start of a more regular dialogue with members about the development of the library service in your area. Very much really a chance to listen and talk to you about how you see the library service and any feedback you've got for us on our plans. So on that basis, I'd like to propose that we come back in the spring, maybe around April, May, to give you a bit more of a detailed update about what we've been doing in your area. And I would expect Mark to present on that, and then come back on a regular annual basis with that real detail around activity that's delivered through the library service, and also engagement and take up of that by local residents, and also be able to sort of compare and contrast across the city as well. So I don't have a presentation as such this afternoon. I'd just like to highlight a couple of things from the report. It is very much in two halves. The first section provides that overview of our work during the period of the pandemic, when we obviously transitioned to a digital service. We already had ebooks and e-magazines, but there was a real growth in people accessing those, as there was in library services up and down the country. But we also invested in new digital resources. So you can now actually access free digital newspapers from your library subscription, which, you know, when we're talking about the poverty agenda, it's a really important service, that making things like magazines accessible and free. I consider it a treat if I buy myself a magazine. You know, why shouldn't we make that available for everybody? We also invested in new digital platforms. So we've got a platform called Niche Academy, and that really enables us to support residents with developing their digital skills. So it's got kind of modules on that, little videos of if you want to get better use out of Zoom, or we've got tutorials on there that actually help you download an ebook, to shows you how to download an ebook, or utilise some of our other resources such as Ancestry, which helps you research your family history. So as I say, we had significant increase in the use of our digital resources, but we also developed for the first time probably a programme of digital online activities. And one of the big successes there was some of the work that Mark and his colleagues were involved in delivering code clubs and Lego clubs for children and families. And we're actually asked to talk to local, regional and national groups about our work. We're seen as a bit of a leader in Leeds libraries and with our code clubs. But with echoes of that compassionate city, I think probably one of my favourite projects we did during this period was our Keep in Touch project. It was a project we picked up from our colleagues in Kirklees libraries. And that project involved us making calls to over 9,000 library members, mainly our older residents who were members of the library service. It was a real opportunity to just phone people up, let them know what was happening to the library service. It felt quite informal. It wasn't some sort of official phone call. And we were able to signpost residents onto other services and support. But for a lot of people, lonely and isolated, it was a point of contact. And quite a few of those phone calls, we were asked to make them more regularly as well. So we had lovely feedback about that service, which was great. So we will continue with that digital offer, something probably we might not have been doing in some of those areas before, but we will be continuing to develop that programme, but really focusing as well on the key elements of our recovery strategy around economic recovery, children and young people, health and well-being, digital inclusion, and of course our books, reading and culture agenda. So just a couple of points from each of those areas. Economic recovery, it's perhaps not what you automatically think about when you think about the library service, but we run a very innovative business and intellectual property service, BIPC Centre. That's a programme we run in conjunction with the British Library. We're now supporting our colleagues in West Yorkshire to develop a BIPC service in their authorities, but more probably of more relevance to you is the fact that we've actually had funding through ERDF monies, and we're going to be working with Adventure to deliver that programme on the high street. So you won't necessarily have to come to Central Library. We will be delivering business support on the high street. And our sort of USP isn't high growth. I mean, we will support somebody if they've got the next big idea, but we're very much around support for startups. And we do really well with women, young people and people from different backgrounds and communities. And we think that's about, you know, the fact that libraries are welcoming and friendly and non-stigmatized, but we do really well in those demographics. And it could be just somebody is doing some crafting at home, got a business idea, and we'll support them to how to turn that into a reality. We talked a bit before around education and educational attainment in the city. It's a key part of what we do. We've just finished our summer reading challenge and healthy holiday programme. And the focus for us now in the next phase of the autumn period is on our early years offer. So it's very much around reintroducing our story and rhyme times, refreshing the staff training, but also launching our story buses. We took delivery just before lockdown of 2 beautiful brand new story buses, absolutely beautiful, covered with Nick Sharratt illustrations. And they're very much a part of our drive to improve early literacy and develop a lifelong love of books and reading from children at the youngest age. And that's, you know, we talked about poverty. I firmly believe that if we want to keep our children out of long-term poverty and out of the criminal justice system, we need to make sure that they can read. So we know that literacy levels in prison are really, really low. And so it's just a real passion of ours within our library service to make sure we do as much as we can to support that early literacy. Health and well-being. We have lots of resources to support health and well-being. At the heart of our health and well-being offer is we have spaces in the community, spaces that people can go, whether to an event or an activity, or just as a place to feel that you can go and have a social interaction, whether you're a carer of an elderly person or you've got young children. It's a place in the community to go to just get out sometimes, which is what you might feel you need to do. I certainly did when I had little toddlers, and it's free, you know, and you can go and meet other people. But we do have an events program as well, as well as a whole range of resources to help people better manage and understand their health. So what we know is that better informed people have better health outcomes. Libraries are a key place of information. And we're also looking to establish our libraries as digital health hubs and to support people access health services digitally, whether that's to renew their prescription, book an appointment, or actually look at authoritative sources about any conditions. So 34 digital health hubs across the city is going to be quite something when we get that going. And that takes us on to digital. You know, in terms of digital inclusion, it's a big issue across the city. We have so much to offer around digital inclusion, free access to the internet with 700 public access PCs across the city, 600 iPads. But even more important to that, as well as the free Wi-Fi, of course, is our staff team, people like Mark and his colleagues who are there to support people to develop their digital skills, whether that's encouraging the children with their coding or supporting older people to access digital for the first time. And during lockdown, we established our #Digital121 service, and that's about a rebranding of our digital offer. But during that period of time, it was very much about, we've got a telephone helpline, so anyone with any digital questions can phone the library. So I think there's a single message for you to get out. It's like, if you need help with digital, go to the library, and we can support that. And then books, reading and culture, still the #1 reason why a lot of people use the library services. I'm not a head of service that says we're more than just books. That seems to be a bit of a strapline these days. Books are absolutely what we're about. And we're continuing looking to develop our books and a culture agenda.
Thank you for that, Andre. Just before I bring Councillor Arif in, my ears pricked up when you said digital and when you said about communities getting involved in libraries. Not all our communities throughout the Inner East have got adequate access to library facilities. They haven't got access to digital equipment. And how can we get those services that the libraries promote, how can we get out to our hardest to reach communities? And I want to see some more interaction with yourselves and our other, as in our priority groups, about the digital inclusion and about our stronger communities team, how we can work putting up these pop-up services. It's about getting that community person by hand and leading them to that, because they won't go on their own because it's an unknown quantity. So I want to see a little bit more about how we bring those into areas where we haven't got those facilities.
Thank you, Chair. Just to echo everything you've said, and I can see your face now that the lights come on. I saw Ruth looking around for the switch. I know this room quite well, so I could see that the lights were there. Just a really good report, very comprehensive, and I say this respectfully, but what I'd like to read more about is what's going on in inner city, the numbers, what's going on locally. It's simply because of the format of where we are. Whilst it's nice to have an overview of what's going on, and you do some brilliant work, because I was part of Child and Leeds, I used to lead on that, and I know the work you do with young kids. But when it comes to this forum, I want to see who's coming through the doors at Compton Centre, what their access is like, what the difficulties are like, what kind of people need the support that they need, what's the pattern of what they're asking for. And then as that can help us as elected members make decisions about funding different things. Money buddies is a big one, you know, because we know financially universal credit. So just an ask, really, please make it so it's related to what's going on locally for us.
And I completely get that. I completely get that. So this is, as I sort of tried to say at the beginning, it's really a starter for 10. It's just to give you a little, obviously last year we were having to offer a citywide digital offer by and large. We've now got our 5 priority areas that we're looking at as part of our recovery strategy around, like I said, economic health and well-being. And what we'll be wanting to come back in May, and then even more detail on a regular annual basis, is actually under each of those headings. So how many people have we supported to start a business, to get selling online in your area? How many people have accessed our digital support sessions, how many children are coming to our Ready Steady Readers. So it's that level of detail that you're going to get next. And also to maybe sort of give you some comparing about what's a citywide average and how we're doing in these areas. But yeah, that's very much going to be the flavour of the next reports.
I think that would be as well to divide it into the 3 wards as well,
Yeah.
so that we know clearly. It's lovely that we've got Compton Road Library, but not all of the Gipton and Harehalls people are accessing Compton, neither are Bermondsey and Richmond Hill. Councillor McSood.
Thank you, Chair. Again, just a point you've just mentioned is about digital. And I'd say the stats on page 23, I'd hazard a guess that these are, a lot of these stats would be about inner city areas, 90,000 adults. I know it says Leeds without essential digital skills, 50,000 are not online at all. And I'd say that these are probably stats more pertinent to inner city wards.
There's a big move now around data poverty as well, because sometimes people have devices but they can't actually afford the data. So I think it is, yeah, the data poverty is a big issue. But I think there's something about libraries, about providing people with that social experience, that social opportunity as well, to come and access digital in a community space, you know, because home, picking up on an earlier conversation, home isn't a great place for a lot of people. And, you know, we've got a new influx of refugees. It's a great place for them to not just to enable them to keep in contact back home, but actually to meet other people. So in my previous role, I saw that happening over computers. I saw refugees and asylum seekers coming into that library for 5 or 6 hours every day, starting to meet each other, breaking down those barriers. Sorry.
Ron?
It instilled me to say this today, but this library service in Leeds is a fabulous service that we've got, and people aren't using it the way they should. Because when I went in the other week there to look at some family history as regarding who lived next door to me, where I lived previously and what have you, straight on the ball, straight to the paper, straight to the documentation, got the names of the people, or I didn't even know their last names actually, some of the people I live next door to, like, you know what I mean? So the service itself, but what I'm coming to, Chair, is while the library people are present is, I think it's time for change now. I think it's time we should call it the Leeds Cultural Library. And that takes on board as regarding what they just have got in that library as regarding the antiquities that they can produce and put on show and what have you like, so the public are aware and not stuck in a cupboard or a drawer somewhere downstairs in the basement. Because we used to go and inspect these libraries as a group of councillors, and what come out of there was the Roman coins, the antiquities of little models of everything, like, you know what I mean, things that don't come up to the surface as regarding what the public should be seeing and what have you. And then when I look at the library service itself, like, you know what I mean, the unknown soldiers in there as regarding where do they actually get the information from to actually what they produce and whatever. The history side of it is on page, where is it now? Let me just get it right. Page 31 and 33. I'll just go to it, Chair, so I can read it out.
Yeah.
Oh, I've got it here, page 132, 30 and 30. So local and family history. This section here is so adorned with books and history in there. But when I just spoke about the people who you want to get to know who live there at the side of you, in the back of you, and where you come from before, the history of that area in question needs exploring more as regarding, do you know your family history? We get the retro in the Yorkshire Evening Post daily, weekly, monthly, telling us where we've lived and what have you, and what people are in the photograph and that, like. They photographed me twice in there, for whatever reason it is, like, I must be something special to do it twice with them lot, because they absolutely are guts as Labour people, like, you know what I mean? So the thing there with the library service is concerned, they're a fantastic organisation. But when you come to the pages here, when it says local and family history, that's one page, right? And then you go over the page again, and it's Leeds Libraries Community and Heritage Trail, Leeds Libraries CH and what have you. It's all there for the kids, for the family members, the people who are running elections, to find out who people live next door to you. That's there on that second floor. You go in there, it's so welcoming, so warm and comfortable that you feel appreciated. And when you've gone in there, do some research, it's there for you, and you put your hands on it straight away. For
Thanks,
people
Ron.
who are politicians who want to know who is where living now, like, it's there for you. You'd have to go to the elections office and disturb them
Right.
at their work. but
Tha-
there it is on the books itself. It's an absolute fabulous organisation.
Thanks,
Attainment
councillor
Arts
Green.
is a library service.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else want to comment on the report? Do you just come back on that?
I think, that is we've got a team of absolutely amazing staff, and that is one of our teams
You
in the
have-
local
you
and family history.
definitely
But,
have, yeah.
I would say that is replicated across the service. We've just had a service review and I'm really excited about the appointments we've made. And you've got Mark in your area now, who's a great member of the team, and he's got a team of community librarians who are really going to be wanting to do their best for your area. But in terms of some of those special collections, we do have some absolutely stunning special collections going back to a Cistercian missal. And what we want to do is have a regular program whereby we take some of those treasures that are in the Central Library and we have a kind of treasures on tour program.
I
So we
think
can actually take them out.
it'd be ideal to work with the community committee and with the champions of those particular areas where we can get these out, not just necessarily in the library, but
no.
get them out into the community so that they can have a
That's what it's
trail
all
in to
about.
see that. So I look forward to that, Andrea.
There's so
working
much
with
we
you.
could talk about.
Yeah.
We might want to theme our
There is,
committees and
Definitely,
actually treat you to a Rian talk.
definitely.
You'd love it. It'll liven up your committee.
Thank you very much. Anybody got any final comments they want to make? No? Lovely. Well, thank you for attending and look forward to working with you and your further reports. Thank you. Moving on, I think it's Ron, can you just turn your microphone
Oh,
off?
sorry
love?
again.
Thank you. Ruth, I think we've come to your agenda items now, and we are quorate, so we can not make recommendations. We can
Happy days.
agree them.
Life
Yeah.
easier for me. Thank you, Chair. So I'll start with the area update report. So that starts on page 37 of your agenda pack. So as normal, the Chair's asked that we take the area update report as read unless anybody has any questions on that. And I'll move on to the finance report. So just Debbie mentioned it earlier, but just to note that there are two projects for the committee to consider as late items, but I'll just come to them at the end of my update, if that's okay. So the finance report itself starts on page 67. And it details the wellbeing revenue, capital, community infrastructure levy and youth activity fund position for the 2021-22 financial year. And then paragraph 17 to 20 on page 69 provide a summary of revenue allocation to date. So table 1 on page 70 shows a total of £142,889.26 that has been allocated to wellbeing projects so far during this financial year. And that leaves a total balance for the committee of £145,996.40 that's still available to allocate. And then paragraphs 22 to 27 set out projects that have been approved by delegated decision since last community committee meeting. And the projects that have been approved by DDN since the last meeting are the Bermondsey Senior Action Welcome Back Party, and £3,000 was awarded as a wellbeing grant from the Bermondsey and Richmond Hill Ward. And then Seacroft Men's Group from Space 2, £8,063 was awarded from Killinbeck and Seacroft's wellbeing allocation. And then the Leeds Urban Arts Project, which was from Seacroft Community on Top, and they awarded £3,872.50 from their YAF allocation, that's Killinbeck and Seacroft Ward as well. And then the Youth Radio Cafe, which was awarded funding to Chapel FM, £3,450 from the Killinbeck and Seacroft's YAF allocation. And then paragraphs 28 to 31 set out projects that have been declined since the last community committee meeting, and that was Streetwork Soccer, Boggart Hill Outreach Project, Junior Sports Hub, Sunday Youth Club, and LCC Youth Services summer activities. And then in terms of projects to be approved today, there are 3 wellbeing projects to be considered, and they're starting on page 72, paragraphs 32 to 34. And these funding requests are all for approval from the 2021 to 22 Inner East Community Committee Wellbeing Budget. So the first one is the Bags of Joy project from Gipton Old Fire Station. The total project cost for that one's £10,495, and the amount proposed from the wellbeing allocation is £3,000 from the Gibson and Hare Hills ward. Happy with that one?
Yeah.
And then next is Seacroft Pedal Cycle Security. So that's from West Yorkshire Police. 1,000. The total cost of that one is 1,460, and the amount proposed is 1,460 from Killenbeck and Seacroft's wellbeing allocation. Happy with that one? And then the next one is the repair and replacement of alley gates in Bermondsey and Richmond Hill ward. So that's a LASBAT project, £1,840. That's for £44, sorry. The total project cost is £1,844, and that's from Bermondsey and Richmond Hill's tasking budget. Happy with that one? And then next is just project monitoring. So that one starts on page 73, paragraphs 35 to 40. So that highlights a project that's taken place that was funded by the Inner East Community Committee, focused on the Bermondsey and Richmond Hill ward. So youth activity funding was awarded to the Youth Association to deliver their Life in Leeds project, which had the aim of building a better understanding between young people and the wider community of what life is like for young people growing up in Leeds in 2021. So over a 12-week period, youth workers worked with a group of Roma young people in the Bellbrooks area of Bermondsey. And the young men worked with youth workers to look at how they could reduce knife crime, gang culture, through different forms of music. So the young people worked closely with the youth workers to produce a positive drill rap, which looked at how life of a young person, where they came from, how they're doing now, and what they see for themselves in the future. So during the time, the group took part in multiple workshops looking at what life is like for young people growing up in Leeds, and they produced these songs and different sort of raps in 2 studios, one in Leeds and one in Barnsley, as well as sort of different tracks and vlogs. And you can see in the report some photos from the sessions, but there's also links as well to a podcast and some vlogs that the young people put together that give a good kind of sense of what they kind of worked on during the project. So alongside the workshop, youth workers also delivered some detached street-based sessions on a different topic each time, and encouraging young people to gain new skills and have their say within the community. So again, these sessions focus on things like graffiti art, crime, knife crime awareness, mental wellbeing and drug awareness as well. So that's just some feedback on one of the YAF projects that's been approved this year and delivered this year. So then just moving on to the Youth Activity Fund on table 2, which is on page 75. That outlines a total of £36,289.50 that's been allocated to YAF projects so far this financial year, and it leaves a balance of £76,001.14 available for YAF, and we've got no YAF projects to approve today, apart from one of the late items that I'll just come back to in a second. And then for small grants and skips, they're detailed on table 3 on page 76. There's been 9 projects approved through that budget so far. And for the committee, there's a remaining balance of £12,682.01. And then on table 6, which is on page 77, that details the capital budget position and highlights that there's still a remaining balance of £79,718.80. We don't have any capital projects to approve today. And then table 7, which is on page 77 as well, outlines the community infrastructure levy, so the SIL allocation. And you can see that there's still a balance of £75,598.07 available for new schemes, and there's no SIL projects to be looked at today. And finally, as I mentioned before, there's just 2 late items which are projects for members to consider for approval today that were circulated earlier. So the first one's a wellbeing project, so that's for consideration from the 2021-22 Inner East Community Committee Wellbeing Allocation. So that one's for temporary CCTV extension at Hazelwood Drive. So it'd be a Leeds City Council Leeds Watch project, and it's for £600 from the Bermondsey and Richmond Hill tasking allocation. It's basically to extend the CCTV that's already there for a further 3-month period. Okay with that one? Yeah. And then the second one is a YAF project. So again, for approval from the 2021-22 Youth Activity Fund. So that was for no amount pop-up skate park sessions to be delivered by LS10. The total amount requested there is £915. Again, it's for Bermondsey and Richmond Hill ward, and it's to deliver a series of pop-up skate park sessions at Knollmount Park. Happy with that one?
That second one for the Knollmount Park, we have said something about the time slots, and
Yeah, and I think Allison's
the
got-
organisation has come back and said they are quite flexible, because we were, you know, it's coming into the winter period and time of when young people would leave school and it's dark, so we did say could
Yeah,
they-
we can
could they
make
be
sure that's built
flexible?
into the
Yeah.
funding agreement for that one as well, councillor. And that's everything for me in terms of.
Can I just ask Ruth that, you know, we've given a lot, the three wards have given a lot of funding out to various organisations, and I think we need some photo shoots in the sense of ward members that have funded these need to be invited to the individual groups, and so we can have a you know, because that needs to be on this this agenda, doesn't it, about how the ward members are using their monies to further the. I know, but I think it's not about saying it every time. It's about making sure that we do it, isn't it? And can we do it this time? Yeah, yeah. Lovely. This is not a. It's not a get at you. It's you know. I think we need to have it, don't we, for our own. Yeah, of course it does. Yeah, but we need to have those. Yeah, yeah. Anything else further? David, is it on this particular item?
Generally, yeah.
Lovely. Yeah, good.
If I can. Sorry, through you, Chair. Item page 40, number 13.
Page 40.
So
So this is the update report. We're still dealing with the financial report, David. So have you nothing to say on the financial report? And I'll bring you back in on this update.
okay. Right.
Yeah, is that all right? Can you? Yeah. Lovely. Nobody's got anything to say on the financial report. Right, lovely. Bring you back then, David, on this. Yeah, we've got to do it correctly. Yeah.
Absolutely, yes. So just to report that we had 60 people at this workshop today, and that the coordinator for domestic violence in East Leeds, Inner East Leeds, I think, is Gemma Richardson, who's based at the Compton Centre.
Yeah.
So just to say, just in case people didn't know, I think she's just taken over
Yeah.
from the previous person. So it was really good, and I think hopefully will be useful for other local care partnerships across the city.
Was this the Seacroft?
This was Seacroft and Hatch together.
Yeah.
And, you know, the materials I think will be shared out so as widely as possible. So Councillor Cooper will report back to, there's a new board, domestic violence board that's been set up. But a lot of these things you don't know about until you find out about them.
I think, can I ask you, David, as the champion for health and wellbeing and being on that particular board, can we have them included? They have been to a previous community committee, but I think now that they've started working within the local care partnerships and they're starting to do more local work, I think we need to invite them back to an update of a report of how things are going. Is everybody in agreement with that? Yeah. Yeah. And how really we can widen that involvement, not just from the local care partnership, but I think about our ward members locally can get involved in that particular work.
And one of the things that came out of it was, as I said, about the issue about the police, really. So the West Yorkshire Mayor is doing this consultation on the police plan that's the consultation finishes on the 17th of October, I think. But it's really important to try and get as many people to contribute to that as possible, because it covers issues like domestic violence, but also policing in the local communities.
Lovely. Thank you. Do members have any other questions, any other business that they'd like to raise? I've just got one item. I think just to say that this will be Ruth's final meeting as our support officer for the community committee. And I'd just like to say on behalf of the committee, you've done a sterling job, Ruth, in what's been very difficult circumstances over this last 18 months. And you know, heartfelt thanks for all your support that you've given us. And I wish you very, very well in your new venture, which I'm sure you're going to be working with, you know, the colleagues over on the right-hand side there in Gipton and Harold's. And you've got a damn good officer there to make things happen. So can you just minute all that? I said everything. Thank you. Lovely. Anybody, anything else? Salma and then Ron.
Just quickly, are we going to continue being at Civic in the foreseeable
No,
future? At what point do we then start inviting sort of?
Well, people could have come to this. They were all invited to come. It's an open act. But I think now that we've gone through the other side of the thing. I think we'll look for
Get back in the
venues within
communities.
the whole area of Inner East and try and open that up. But as you well know,
I do,
with
Chair.
the issue of
Absolutely.
COVID and making sure that the venue that we use
It's
is
COVID safe.
COVID safe and
Absolutely.
it's accessible for
Okay.
all members of the community. So yes, it's always been in there,
Brilliant.
and we'll look to do that for the next
Thank you, Chair.
meeting. Ron,
thought here on the skills and what have you, Chair. I'd prefer to send it to you for you to okay and then send it out to the members. Because what I've done today, I've pinned it all together and missed a bloody page out, haven't I?
all right.
I've missed the second page out of the report for the members to be given out tonight, like, you know what I mean? But I can get it to you when the second page is put back in
Is
again.
that for the skills,
And I'll
Ron?
send it to you.
That
Okay,
for
to be sent out
skills?
by the officers. and that.
Lovely.
Okay.
Thank you.
My apologies, everybody.
Well, with that, I'll wish everybody a safe journey home and thank you for attending. The next meeting is December. It's a Christmas one. We'll have some mince pies on the agenda, yeah. And venue to